Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. A week ago I released my first top 10 video of a new series and wow, your feedback was absolutely amazing. The only thing that I didn't like about last week was the fact that it was all premium vehicles. And so this week I'm going to do another top 10 most profitable tanks, but it's going to be non-premium tanks. So if you're a completely free-to-play player or maybe you just want to start out a new account on a different server, then these are going to be the best possible credit makers without even spending $1 on the game. And just like last week, the statistics are taken from the awesome VB Addict website, which has loads of really cool features if you want to delve a little bit deeper into the statistics of World of Tanks. And before we begin, I must clarify that this is a list of tanks, not self-propelled guns. And there was a threshold of 150 games, and any tanks that hadn't played that many were omitted from the top 10. So without further ado, let's get started. In at number 10, it is the T-46. This Tier 3 Soviet light tank is most likely one of the first vehicles you ever played in the game, and it has a lot of good things going for it. Number one, its mobility. It is rather fast indeed, able to outflank its opponents. It also has a variety of guns, and they all have impressive penetration characteristics. The gun that you're seeing here is the 45mm with 75mm of base pen, 55 alpha damage, and a 26 round a minute rate of fire. And when you take in consideration that its shells only cost 35 credits per shot, it's no wonder that this is one of the most profitable light tanks that you can play, scoring its owners 5,491 credits per game played, and that is not bad for a Tier 3 light tank. Coming in at number 9, it is the Stug 3 Ausführung G. This Tier 5 Soviet tank destroyer has some of the most comfortable gun handling statistics of any of the low-tier tank destroyers, and is both deadly with its 75mm main armament that you see here, and also a 105mm derp. And I think it's really that 105mm derp that really plays out well with regards to profitability on the Stug 3G, as you can hit your opponents for 350 up to 390 alpha damage depending on the ammunition that you choose. Everything else about this tank is fairly decent. It has some frontal armor, the first German tank destroyer to have so along the line. It's also got pretty okay mobility, limited at 40 kilometers an hour. And when you combine this with 0.33 accuracy and 1.7 seconds aim time and practically free shells at 109 credits per shot and decent penetration, owners of the Stug are making 5,612 credits per game. At number 8, it is the KV-2. This Tier 6 Soviet heavy tank almost needs no introduction. It carries a 152mm main armament that is famous for one-shotting pretty much everything that it hits, of course if it manages to penetrate, but with its high explosive rounds capable of doing 910 average damage and 86mm of penetration, it doesn't really matter what the KV-2 hits, it is gonna have a bad day. And while the base shell cost on the KV-2 might be slightly higher at 810 than other vehicles in this comparison, when you're firing high explosive rounds of such large caliber, it doesn't matter if you don't penetrate, you are still going to do substantial amounts of damage to even higher tiered heavies, just like that Tiger. And so the KV-2 is making 5,773 credits per game in the last few months. Number 7, it's the M4 Sherman. This Tier 5 American medium tank has a 105mm derp variant that seems to make its owners tons of credits. 5,826 per game to be exact, and that's because it has 410 average damage and a very impressive rate of fire of 6.66 rounds per minute. Its aim time is also decent at 2.5 seconds, and the vehicle has 12 degrees of gun depression and the mobility to be able to outflank most opponents that it's going to meet, especially heavier vehicles. The M4 Sherman is so versatile that you just cannot go wrong with it, which makes it one of the best picks for trying to make credits in a non-premium tank. And one thing I didn't appreciate about this vehicle until recently is it actually has a whopping 370 meters base view range, and so when you're working that ridgeline like a god with your 12 degrees of gun depression, you're still going to be able to spot your opponents at far and engage them. At number 6, it's the BDR G1B. This tier 5 French heavy tank really surprised me recently when I played it during a Tech Tree showcase, as its 90mm main armament with decent penetration of 135 and 240 alpha damage just seems to mop up the enemy team. In fact, the BDR is very profitable, and it's the first tank in this list that makes its owners over 6,000 credits per game that they've played in it. And the reason why it's so profitable is that even though its penetration is decent and its alpha damage of 240 is awesome for tier 5, it only has a 255 base shell cost. And in addition to this, the tank's armor isn't exactly terrible either, with 80mm on the front of the turret and 60 on the front of the hull. And bizarrely enough, the rear of this tank is 60mm thick as well, which is better than the side armor of 40. This vehicle is certainly a hidden gem along the French heavy tank tech tree, and it might be something that you want to check out yourself. In at number 5, it is the OI. This is the first Japanese tank on this list, and this tier 6 heavy is an absolute behemoth to contend with, not only in size, but also in its combat capacity. The vehicle has two very competitive main armaments. Firstly, a 150mm howitzer, which is very similar to that of the KV-2. However, its high explosive penetration isn't quite as good as the KV-2, but if you want to fire arm-piercing rounds, well, this is a much better vehicle. On the other hand, if derpy guns aren't quite your thing, then the vehicle has a very competitive 105mm main armament with 250 shell cost, 300 alpha damage, and 175mm of penetration, which is rather nice for tier 6. So it's no wonder that the OI has been making 6,264 credits per game. And the vehicle's 150mm of frontal hull and turret armor make it very forgiving, making it especially suitable for a new player. And even the recent nerfs to the tank don't seem to have slowed it down, so love it or hate it, Japanese heavies are here to stay, and they're a great pickup for anyone who is just starting out. In at number 4, it is the Type 3 Chi-Nu. This tier 5 Japanese medium tank kinda took me by surprise on this list, but after I've looked at the statistics of this vehicle, I no longer question why it is making 6,311 credits per game, and that is because it's just so well-rounded. There is nothing about this vehicle that is terrible. It has 1,500 DPM, 0.37 accuracy, 2.3 seconds aim time, 125 average damage. That's not great for tier 5, but it's certainly not awful, with 124mm of penetration. And one thing that really makes the Chi-Nu very profitable is the fact that its standard shell cost is a measly 82. And that's something that I've really noticed making this top 10 list, that unless the vehicle is firing high explosive rounds, the base shell cost is immensely important when you're working out profitability. In at third place, it is the Archer. Oh, I was worried that British tank wasn't going to make it into the top 10 this week, and this tier 5 tank destroyer does so because it has the same gun at tier 5 that the Black Prince has at tier 7, with 171mm of base penetration, 150 alpha damage, impressive aim time, accuracy at 0.36, and a measly 175 shell cost. That means the Archer is making 6,392 credits per game. And I would like to attribute this amazing profitability to the fact that it goes backwards very quickly, but I don't know. That British tanks running away from the situation, I'm not sure if we can have that on this channel. Nevertheless, the Archer, certainly one to pick up for those of you who are looking to have a very decent gun and also to be very sneaky at the same time. This vehicle does especially well when you get a full concealment crew and you whack on a camo-net and binoculars and a gun rammer and just go to town at range. In at number 2, it is the Stridsvagn M42. Now this one, again, like the Chi-Nu, was a bit of a surprise for me. A tier 5 Swedish medium tank in at second place for most profitable non-premium vehicle in World of Tanks. And again, just like the Chi-Nu, it's because everything about this vehicle is decent. It has 115mm of penetration, 150 alpha damage, 115 shell cost, which makes it rather cheap. Decent view range at 350. It's got some gun depression as well, 15 degrees to be exact, and its armor, well, it isn't impressive at 55mm on the front of the hull and the turret, but at least that's going to be able to bounce a high explosive round occasionally. And so if you're looking for a versatile ridgeline warrior, then the Stridsvagn M42 might be right up your street, and if you can play as well as the average World of Tanks game, then you're going to be getting 7,087 credits per round. So before we reveal number one, I want to give an honorable mention to artillery. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, artillery is currently the most profitable non-premium class in the game, around tier 5 and tier 6. If I was to include artillery in this list, then there would be hardly any tanks in it, only self-propelled guns. And the M44 is the king pig with this regard. The M44 was making 9,711 credits per game. That is over 2,500 more what will be the number one in this list. And so if you're a skilled artillery player and you're constantly getting abuse from your team and the World of Tanks community, at least find some solace in the fact that if you're playing around tier 5 and tier 6, you are playing the most profitable non-premium vehicles in World of Tanks. And in first place, it is the Panzerkampfwagen 4 Ausführung H. This tier 5 German medium tank was one of the first vehicles that I fell in love with in World of Tanks. And because of its 105mm derp, it is immensely profitable. 120 shell cost. That's practically nothing when if you penetrate, you're doing 410 average damage. And if you do want to use armor piercing or heat rounds, you still have 350 average damage as well. So one-shotting is a normality for this vehicle. And also its aim time is decent, 2.3 seconds. Its rate of fire is incredible at 7.5 rounds per minute. If you can penetrate with this high explosive gun, you are doing more than even tier 10 medium tanks can do. And when you combine this with some decent frontal armor, 80mm in parts on the hull, 50 on the turret, 350 meters view range, and also 10 degrees of gun depression, the Panzer IV was making 7,334 credits per game, and in the last few months, it was the most profitable non-premium tank in World of Tanks. And so, ladies and gentlemen, those are the top 10 most profitable non-premium tanks in the game in the last few months. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down and let me know why. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, thanks to Captain Ninetails and the 69 of you who liked their suggestion, I'm going to be playing my way towards the SDB1 and showcasing all of the Japanese medium tanks from tier 1 up until tier 10. And if you've never been to one of my Tech Tree showcases before, they're basically like miniature tank reviews all the way up along the line, so you can see if it's a line that's worth grinding, or alternatively, if you already have the tanks, maybe pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.